All right. Well, I'm so delighted to have all of you on this call. We are celebrating basically a year of using the tarot court cards to explore ancestry through writing and art. And I'll explain a little bit more about the process. And that was, of course, offered through Antioch University. And my name's Tania Pryputniewicz. I'm delighted to have been working with Ken through this program since 2020. I'm a poet and a tarot muse and an artist. I have a couple poetry collections out and a tarot workbook. So we use the concepts around the heart as a compass in our courses. Just a little background, I'm sure most of you are already oriented to the tarot, but just in case, it's a 78 card visual journey in every tarot deck. And while the artwork might differ, these are some of the ways it's been applied over time as a sacred Q&A since like the 12th, 13th century for asking questions, basically divination. And then it's also been a beautiful challenge for deck makers and philosophers and thinkers across time who take those same 78 archetypal concepts and reinterpret them. So we've got all of these beautiful decks: Celtic, cat decks, fairies, Dolly, dream keepers. It's just a beautiful thing, a structure we get to play with. And then as writers, we get to use it as a springboard or a source. It's visual storytelling cards that we can use to create for journaling or ekphrasis, or to create plot lines around memoir, novels, essays. Really, the applications are endless. So in this specific class, we use the court cards, which are also known as people cards. And the way that they are structured is from the page to the king. And the idea is sort of a progression of growth from a green seed to a mature expression. And what I've shown you here is the Light Seers Tarot. And though a lot of the deck makers will assign a gender, and they're looking at splitting out the traits between masculine and feminine, some decks have also chosen to allow that interpretation to be open. So you'll notice in the Light Seers, you've got the page and the knight, queen and the king. The Rider-Waite Smith has the knight as a male riding forward with his heart, but the Light Seers was like, we're going to have this drummer embodying that energy. So we spent, I think, 20 weeks interspersed with time to digest our learnings, but a lot of last year going through these cards and connecting them to ancestors. And here I'm just showing you an example of how we use them. So the Wand family, at the end of our weeks together, we asked ourselves to look back over the week or the month of cards and say, what did we learn about our ancestors in the family tree? And the other invitation was to make a personal tarot card using any art form to also honor whichever ancestor in the family tree we may have connected with. And sometimes we just connected to the energy in a card and made one for our own personal connection to the expression. Our tarot class process, we use this heart's compass moment to just get aligned before we work. And that's very simple, putting hands over the heart. We write to the imagery on the card to connect to the ancestor. Then we live with that writing for the whole week, see what experiences come up in the week, and then come back and share about that at the end of our week. And then what you're seeing today is the culmination of writing work from all of these classes. Right now, I'm just going to invite you to put a hand over your heart if you wish. We're dedicating our reading today to a beautiful student we had, and writer and teacher from Sonoma County. Her name was Elizabeth Brennan. She was with us for a couple of years on this journey, and we lost her in August. And what I'm sharing here are two of her cards, which were so beautiful. The Page of Wands with the poppies from California and the flowers that she loved, as well as the Cups card with the woman standing in front of the waves. And as I was looking through my notes about our time together, this phrase jumped out where she said, I want to be remembered in the springtime when the flowers begin to bloom. So Elizabeth, wherever you are, being it's dedicated, I'm going to turn it to the rest of your classmates now. We will have a Q&A at the end as well. So Allie, welcome.
I suppose unmuting would be a good idea. Thank you so much, Tania. Shall I go right into my reading?
Yeah, it's up to you. You want to take a moment to introduce yourself? I'd love that, or whatever you feel to do.
Sure. My name's Valerie Coleman, and I'm a graduate of Antioch, both the bachelor program and a master's program in Seattle. And I started taking these workshops, and at first it was outside of my comfort zone, but I quickly acclimated and I'm really enjoying it. And I've signed up for the next 2-year iteration, and I'm really pleased with it. And the poems that I wrote about are all from the Wands suits, and I will start there. I like the word apothecary, though I use the word pharmacy or drugstore as though elemental magic is long gone. I envy the midwives and the women who used to gather herbs and powders and make poultices, teas, and incense, although I use the words compress, syrups, and pills. It has all been knowledge disconnected from Mother Earth and transferred from the hands of women to the banks of men. All parts of the yew tree are poisonous. Tea steeped from the leaves easily makes a small child sick. Placed in wise womanly hands, yew heals swollen tonsils, inflamed joints, and aborts. Some believe the trunk of the churchyard yew contains purifying properties, like a baptismal font or a polished coffin lined with silk. Say, like how a devil serves as a cycle pump to heaven. Townsmen chose yew wood as a cask barrel staves to aid in rotting grapes, and often as rods to bludgeon the stranger for the sin of being a stranger, never forgiven, but often forgotten until consequences catch up. Rods hewn from yew trees offer balance to the crippled witch. Quicker to hide her trade than to heal, the wife gathers twigs for her broom from the hardy hackberry tree, from the beaverwood, the sugarberry, the nettle tree. Sometimes the branches' wart-like protuberances transfer to her knuckles. A host to butterfly larvae, the flowers are often perfect, and the townsmen think the tree is merely ornamental. Yew rods have been cut to hold up the climbing vine, to frame a window, to offer the magician a wooden bridge between her hands, earth, and the sky. Everything depends on what is cut and whether it is ever picked up. The Page of Wands. The Page of Wands always stoops to smell the roses or to sneak spreading flocks between the pavers. Equal parts haphazard and methodical, she generates ideas while planting seeds. My great Aunt Winnie loved the garden. She labored beside the work crew that planted crocuses and daffodils each spring in the concrete planter bowl straddling the entrance. Flowers were intended to make visitors feel welcome. Winnie had no visitors, not her mother, not any of her 5 brothers, but then taking time for family can be such an inconvenience. More than anything, Winifred loved to listen to music. Music soothes the soul, and the Page of Wands, by default of immaturity, faces challenges. Whatever journey she began back home, the King Serpent circumnavigated it and had Winnie institutionalized here among catatonics and their colonic irrigations, among palliative shocks and needles. Access to a turntable took finagling the one attendant who wasn't easily agitated. Even Glenn Miller and Gene Autry became irritating when overplayed. Winnie was, my father said, a talented pianist. She spent her time playing for the inmates and probably felt fulfilled. The Page of Wands is modest, and Winnie may not have realized she had been sterilized. The page is a dreamer, an idealist whose energy uncoils as optimism. And maybe Winnie did feel fulfilled Sundays after lunch, plunking out as time goes by on the auditorium piano. Capable hands her father saw no use for. The King of Wands. Well, I'd hardly say he's effeminate, though he is dapper, applying a grand expression to his clothes, from his lint-free top hat to his well-shined shoes and all the accoutrements in between. His glasses are special, almost magic, the way everything he sees is imbued by his own curiosity and a yearning to understand. Whether he has chosen to write Dada poems or to paint a surreal story on canvas, or even to give a PowerPoint presentation at work, he is a consummate communicator. He burns brightly. Sometimes he is too much, an overachiever that is often harrowing to follow, no matter how inspiring his endeavors are. I tried to love him once. I was so young, naive, and unskilled. There was little space for my ideas and even less for me. And like a lion in its grandiosity, he had plenty enough of wildcats in his pride. Queen of Wands. The Queen of Wands is not sensual so much as sexual. She is fecund, and if nature rearranged itself, the queen could birth babies until the cows come home. You don't seduce her. She knows what she wants, and if she doesn't want you, you will know it, though you will still feel your loveliness and not think of it as rejection. How sunlight lights upon her face. Does she wear a halo? Maybe for a time. Orion imbues her with an otherworldly glow so bright she can paint, dance, or write by her own light. Sometimes she spouts an avian head or wings that are luxurious as fur wrapped around her shoulders. She can take you along as she rises to moonlight heights. The queen radiates magic and keeps an assortment of masks, which she applies with such cunning that you will thank her. The queen holds her scepter, a wand hewn from the mustard tree, because all great things come from small beginnings, held slightly away from her torso, pointing to all the possibility in the world, pointing to the road you should follow to find the innate exquisiteness of your own inner beauty. Okay, my last piece is the Queen of Wands reversed. I didn't sign any papers. It was mutual, a handshake, culturally driven, just the way things are. The team of doctors contained the capitalist bourgeois, land barons, and a deaconess spouting sacramental catechisms for the sake of modesty. Through their surgical intervention, my tongue would become my husband's tongue, sutured, the first and the last domestic stitch he would ever undergo. I saw him unconscious on his own metal table, breathing through a sheer shroud of gauze, delicate, almost pretty, an anesthetic apathetic fog, not even his vulnerability bothering him. I'd been told that having only bravado and masculine posturing as language, he would recover and speak my words. He would summarize books I'd read and told him about as if he'd read them. My meticulously formed opinions would be his conclusions. I thought I was fine with this. If my words came from a male mouth, then they might be listened to. If my tongue were patched onto his tongue, he would finally have something meaningful to say. Beautiful, fanciful prose like a fountain from his mouth. Almost too late, I realized the lie in this. He would never validate my words. I was the only one to speak feminine truths. I struggled through the drugged stupor, and brandishing a scalpel, I killed him. Many say I overreacted, that I crossed a line, that I should have aimed for the complicit doctors. Others, that I am truly a woman, a monster. Thank you.
Thank you, Allie. And next up is Pratishta. Prat.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pratishta. I also go by Prat. So as you can see, I grew up in India, and I've been really fascinated with spirituality since I was young. I started my tarot exploration kind of through when I was in college, but I never knew how to use it as a tool of exploration and inspiration. So this was a really wonderful class for me, and just sharing space with all the wonderful people here has really helped deepen my exploration of tarot as well. So I'm super excited to talk about the 3 pieces that I created and my reflections through my tarot journey. Awesome. So the first card I created was the Queen of Cups. So when I started trying to dive into my ancestry, I realized how much ancestral trauma was coming up, and those emotions were really heavy, but the heaviness and just the power of these emotions was the same reason I was so drawn to the work. So, because I was interested in exploring that to see how a lot of those shared stories lived in me, and how I could connect to my family and my ancestry through exploring these stories. So I realized that my emotions in this process could either be my biggest weakness or my biggest strength. So it was really important for me to continually come back to my heart space and really ground in that empathy and connection that I wanted to feel with my parents, even while we were talking about things that were difficult and things that were traumatic. So that's what the cup towards my hand, towards my heart represents, is just filling myself with love, showing up with compassion, and recognizing that I can just accept my parents and myself in where we are right in this moment without trying to change anything, and just be in a state of love. But through this process, I also recognize that I need to be authentic to myself. And while things that were difficult that were coming up, it was really important for me to still value and acknowledge what was showing up for me. And that's what the peacock feathers in this image represent. It represents me still being authentic to myself and honoring the parts of myself that I wouldn't want to show, and really celebrating those things. Because the Queen of Cups also acknowledges that there's power in the shadow, and the goal is never to fully get rid of the shadow, but to embrace it, and also exist as a full, show up wholly as a human being. And then the final part is the third eye chakra. So that's always me connecting to my higher self, connecting to my spiritual practices, and knowing that when things feel right and things feel in connection and flow, that I can follow those whispers and those trailheads that bring me closer to both understanding myself and understanding my family. So that's what I wanted to represent through this card of the Queen of Cups. And so the second card I worked on was the Knight of Swords. And more than this being related to my ancestry, it was my personal expression of the card. A lot of times, while I'm very curious and I'm inclined to study and learn a bunch of different things, I am hesitant into just jumping in and taking action and pursuing something when it doesn't feel perfect. I'm always trying to look for the right time that I feel prepared enough just to jump into something to show up fully. So I created this card because sometimes I think it's important to not wait for that perfect moment and to just jump in with that fiery energy, just go streamline towards the goals that you're trying to pursue. And in my journey of doing that, I've recognized that there's always opportunity to learn through the journey. I'm never going to be perfect. I don't need to be perfect right now. But as long as I'm always trying to grow and reflect through my experiences, I can keep going upwards towards what I really want to achieve and how I want to serve and show up. So this is me trying to lean more into my ideas and take a leap of faith and just jump into something instead of worrying about things being perfect before I take action. And the last card I created was for the Page of Swords, which is supposed to be complementary to the other energy. The Page of Swords always reminds me of my mother because she is incredibly creative and she's always pursuing a bunch of different ideas. But I think through our discussions, I realized she's so creative, but she the nurturing of the energy is really what brings her closer to the goal. So I think this card for me is supposed to represent curiosity blended with nurturance of that path to really develop the skills and get that. And through our tarot journey, my mom's actually started putting together a recipe book from her grandmother to document all our family recipes that have been passed down. And that's been a really fun exploration and journey talking to her about that because she incorporates things from Ayurveda and Indian medicine and talks about how the women in our family had this inherent knowledge that has been passed down through generations. And it just feels really great for me to be able to connect with my family and my culture in that way. So that was my exploration with that. And then overall, through my year-long journey with the cards and exploring my ancestry, I recognized just the power of even putting conscious energy into that and how much closer it can bring us to our family history. I came into this wanting to heal some of the stuff that I've been through, and these cards served as questions for me to ask my parents, and I learned so much about them and was able to understand them on a much deeper level. So I'm really grateful for these cards that served as an exploration, and I recognize that I also, by healing myself and by working on my own healing and asking questions that were difficult and diving into things that were coming up for me, I was also helping my family reflect and talk about what was coming up for them. So overall, this helped me feel really connected to my family, and I'm really grateful for this experience. And it was super fun just diving in and trying to create art based on tarot and what was coming up.
Thank you so much, Prat. Debbie. We can't hear you yet.
That's the key word for this century. You're on mute, right? So I'm Debbie Smith. My experience with tarot goes way back into the dim 70s. I don't even remember who first introduced me to it. But I know it was back then because I have a book that I bought that was printed in 1979 that was the Feminist Tarot. So it's been that long, and there was a kind of a hiatus for several years, and then my daughter actually kind of brought me back into the relationship with the tarot. My experience, I mean, I really enjoyed these classes with Tania. It's been an opportunity to really go deeply into each of these archetypes. And in doing the ancestor work, I didn't have a lot of connection in a way that I expected with my ancestors, but I got glimmerings, and it seems to me like there's a sense of my connection with my mother's family and that that lineage, and my father's family, that the energy in those are different. It's like my connection with my mother's family feels more like I thought it was cups, which is all about emotion and stuff like that. But when I connected to them through the cards, it was through fire, through the wands. And Tania, do you have that the card, the Curandero card? Yeah. So this is the card the one card I made. But it was using the Herb Crafters deck, and for the Herb Crafters deck, the king of the each suit is called the Curandera, which is healer. And I had this real connection to, this is my great grandmother, my mother's grandmother, and when my father was dying, I was doing energy work on him off the body, and my mother was in the room, and she said, my grandmother used to do that. She used to do that same kind of work. And then I found out that she was also a midwife. She was kind of like every town had the midwife. It wasn't somebody who was trained in a hospital. It was somebody everybody knew was good at helping people give birth, And so she was a midwife, and she also worked with herbs. So I really felt a connection with her through that. And then one day I was kind of working with the cards, and I was doing a little meditation, and all of a sudden you can see these 6 women down at the bottom there. All of a sudden they popped up, and it was these 6 women in kind of house dresses, like from the 30s and 40s, those house dresses with the little flowery print, and they were all sitting there looking at me going, hi, it's about time. And it was like, somehow these are my female ancestors. They're all about being about women's knowledge and wisdom, but in a very unpretentious way. Women used to, the men would go in the living room at parties, and women would sit in the kitchen and share their information and knowledge, and I really had that sense, and I really had that sense. And also in front of each of them was a candle. So again, that connection with the fire element, and the light. So, and the flower here is in the Herb Crafters deck, the flower is the Damiana flower, which also has a fair amount to do with community and things like that. So it was really wonderful for me to have this experience of working on this card and seeing it, come into life, into vision. So that's kind of my mother's side. And then as we were doing the swords, I really connected a lot to my father. So, and going through from the age through the King of Swords, we're all given swords, knives, scissors, needles, saws, shovels, teeth, words. We cut to the core, stab, inject medicine, wisdom, and humor with them. We trim what's overgrown or doesn't fit our design, slice pies and pieces of life with them, knit things together, protect what we love, pierce the heart, draw blood. The page learns to wield the sword through apprenticeship and practice. The knight gains skill through applying the practice in the world. The queen applies the skill with wisdom. The king masters application of wisdom and skill with authority. So in 1918, my father was a soldier stationed in China. Soldiers are swords. Before there were hired guns, there were hired swords. Inside that human sword was an 18-year-old farm boy with a third-grade education who kept a diary. Yearning to master the written word, he clumsily writes about guard duty, muster, rifle practice, poker, payday. That diary doesn't reveal his skill with words. I loved when he told stories about running away from home, his teenage years in the circus, about China, and after the Marines in his 20s and 30s, riding freight trains to find work, living under bridges, prospecting in the desert, how he met my mom. He became a wielder of words from the Bible. He studied diligently, gained skill through teaching, and became a master at applying the wisdom in the words. From the pulpit, the pastor would say, "Brother Valentine, is there a passage in the Bible for that?" Where my mother's switch wounded the surface, his considered words pierced my heart. His love of words flows in his children and grandchildren. My daughter, the lawyer, who has mastered the legal language that protects the powerless from predators. My daughter, the teacher and writer, who crafts words into stories that pierce to the heart and win prizes. Myself, the therapist, who helps people give their bodies words. I only just now noticed in writing this that the word sword contains word. And that's it.
Thank you, Debbie. And Valerie.
Hi, everybody. Okay. I'm a little disjointed, so just bear with me a little bit. I can so relate to my fellow tarot writers in some way, in every way that they've, in various things that they've said. And just my update, one of the things I found out from being in here was you don't have to stick to one deck. You can own multiple decks. So my one caveat is my most recent deck is actually now the Star Tarot, which is a very beautiful, powerful deck, yes, which I share with others. I really related to Pratt, what you said about like doing this really brought up some ancestral trauma, and that there must be a reason I'm here doing it anyway. And as I did this one, this other sort of monthly training I'm in, decided to do these ancestor journeys, and I'm like, oh, here it is. It's like, and what Debbie was saying, you know, I'm an only child, and I didn't have huge amounts of family around me, although through my father's family there are a lot of people, but I was kind of distant, so that was challenging to try to relate to. And also, I found that I didn't have too many words, but I do crafts. So I'm going to be showing some of the poetry that manifests in other ways, but might be kind of wordless. And so the deck that I used much through most of this training was like, Debbie, it's the Herb Crafters Tarot. Yeah, if you want to pin me or however it's better, I don't know. Was using the Herb Crafters Tarot, which is the deck of herbs with different, as Debbie was saying, different meanings for the people cards. And I wanted to just read a little bit and tell you a little bit. So one of the reasons why it was hard for me was because in looking at my ancestors, I realized in my Jewish roots, there was a genocidal Holocaust that did not leave a lot of ancestors. And looking at my African-American roots, there was, I'll call it a genocide that did not leave a lot of ancestors or lineages way back. And looking even at my Native American roots, which are the least that I know about, but what came up very often the most here, there was a genocide that left very few survivors and lineage. So there was a lot of grief and not having direct passage to some of my ancestry, either in people or actual knowledge or hands-on holding of things from those people or pictures. And that was challenging, but I found that every time I would, for example, do some writing or do a journey, it would come up like, I would think of my grandmother or my African-American grandmother side from the South, and I would have an image of her and I'd go into it like an archetypal journey. And what would come up was this strong, like she was very skinny. She was this like strong warrior woman with fabric and beads and prints and just, it was like this powerhouse. And she made me think about some of the relatives of a genogram, like a family tree I had done. And this woman who I had met when she didn't have any words anymore in my family, who was a healer, like a root woman with herbs, and the ways, the little back kitchen table that Debbie was talking about, ways that we know of healing in my family's legacies. And thinking also about my Native American, this woman, this like shaman, huge, strong woman would show up for me a lot. And then like little bits and pieces of knowledge that was like very, just wisdom coming in. So that was also really, really powerful for me. And some of the journeys I did about to South Carolina with my daughters who are adopted. So the lineage goes on, but it's not always blood. But I want them to know as much as they can, as I can, where they come from. And so like looking to do going to the sweetgrass basket makers and making baskets together with my daughters. So this was one of the ones we went to search down to make together. That was just holding on lineage and ancestry and going on. And the book, the book of Debbie, what's the name of it? A sweetgrass.
Braiding
sweetgrass. So for example, and so I do basketry a lot, and then in the people cards of the herb crafter, in particularly the earth ones came to me a lot. And one of them literally was about wandering and searching through the desert and weaving these things with yucca in these like little things. But one of the other ones was literally about the braiding sweetgrass. And so I make baskets and I work with the earth and the leaves of the earth in that way, and herbs. I'm not a big herbalist, but the earth is very powerful to me. And my crafting, I realize, is very much about using indigenous ways. And the other, one of the other things in my Jewish grandmother, who I didn't really know, that has always been really important to me, was that I found out that she read tea leaves. And I know, like, from my mother showed me a little bit how to do it. And she also, my mother learned how to read cards with a deck of playing cards when she was visiting the Caribbean. So it's like somewhere the cards and the mystics are all there. Although my mother, for example, was a very her presentation was very rational, but somehow the mystical is also there. And I also, so the tea leaves were important to me. And then in the herb crafters book, as they're just describing how the people cards in the herb crafters features the hands of the herb crafter. Their intention is to highlight the plant as well as to celebrate the slow, intentional ritual of handcrafting. With every berry gathered and tinctured mixed, we enflesh the sacred, making prayer visible. As the cultural anthropologist and tarot aficionado, I'll say, Angeles Arian writes, hands were humans' first magical tool. Hands give, hands receive. Your ancestors live in your hands. Hands are symbols of initiation. They have the power to love, create, move, and change. They are associated with giving, receiving, and serving. They teach us about reciprocity. Hands bridge the profane and sacred worlds. So one of my cards, like I lay out my cards week to week and I have the suits out. One of my favorite, which reminds me of like my root woman heritage, is this mother, Madre of Fire with time. And she's outside in an outdoor kitchen. And they show her hands grinding up the herbs. And her book says potions and brews. And it's all the ways that we heal and give with what the earth has given us. And I have recently been doing a lot of pottery, and I would say that's like my poetry of the motion of motion and movement. So this was one that I had shared that it's purple and it has like a spiral in the middle. It's kind of hard to see just the way it came out. And to me, that's evolutionary. And this is just a recent bowl that, I think keeping on the way we give to be remembered and can be long lasting in our ancestors it's just a bowl. And I mix the stain to this bowl. I just really love it. And so that's it.
Thank you so much, Valerie. Really lovely. It's so much fun to see all of the work in one place from the year. All of you speak so beautifully and deeply. Thank you for sharing that with all of us. I'm going to open it up to questions. If anybody has questions, please feel free to unmute, or if shy, put a question in the chat. Okay, too. Or, any other to make, that's fine too. So.
Well, I have to make a comment. I had the most pleasurable time just this afternoon, and I want to share with you, it was my intention to work on, some other builds. I have an economy class and a few others that I wanted to, but I couldn't. I was mesmerized by each of you. And as an artist myself and someone who enjoys creative writing and certainly spoken word, I'm touched. In fact, I've been weeping just a little at the power and the magic of your journey and your execution and your art today. It's rhetorical. It was heuristic. It represented life's discoveries and chronicled or journaled that for us. And it's universal. Each of your moments, your stories, your wordsmithing has an infinite and universal connection. And I don't think that's for me. I think it's a proud statement of your work and your time together. I can't thank you enough for this afternoon. Sincerely, all of you. And I also want to connect you with Sergio Ocampo and our programs for clinical psychology. We offer programs for licensure renewal for therapists and mental health professionals. And Sergio focuses on somatic experiencing, the body's experiencing, which is in so much of your observation and your work. But he also hosts the generational trauma piece, which somehow I want those students that are in generational trauma to meet this group. And I can't share with you how profoundly I think you could impact one another, and consequently the therapist and clinicians service to healing. I'm going to think about this and reach out to all of you and have a big blast of a session where I've got clinical therapists and mental health professionals in combination with artists like yourselves to inspire a whole new movement of healing. That's what I'll dream on today with you. But sincerely, thank you so much. And thank you, Tania, for your leadership. It's
you.
exquisite.
Beautiful reflections, Ken. And, if I am in February, we're going to continue our work with the major arcana cards, connecting them to the minors that link numerically. So I don't know if any of you are interested. I think Ken is going to offer an email follow-up that'll have information about that if you want. And in the meantime, just so grateful to have spent the afternoon with you. Any other questions or thoughts?
I just wanted to say too that I don't know if I mentioned, but one of the treasures to me about this series of classes has been the other women and what they have produced. It's like I'm just, Ken, you said you were touched. I mean, every time we meet, I'm touched by what happens in the class. It's amazing, magic. Yeah.
I want to second that and really honor Tania for hanging in there with us from the beginning, from the ACEs to the end, which we're not done with. It's really, you did a very beautiful thing. And I want to also just say to Ken that really it's the old magic, the old ways of being that we're linking, that are returning to healing us in the present time. Yeah.
Thank you, Valerie. Bridge work, heart bridging. And yeah, that's exciting to think about all those disciplines coming together. Yeah, thank you so much for spending your Sunday with us, and Ken for giving up your Sunday too.
Last thing is I just want to encourage anybody, like if you're looking for connection and this calls to you, it's a great way to stick your toe in. It's just very beautiful connection to be a part of.
Finding your tribe is invaluable in life's biggest journeys, and it's a pleasure to observe and feel that spirit here with you today. I talk too much, but you obviously have prompted me to. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay. Well, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thank you so much for coming.